Video blog, the video blog, it's the video blog with Raven. Yeah. That's the big new theme music that we have. Paul Schaefer wrote it for me. I'd like to thank Paul Schaefer and the band for playing. We didn't actually get them this week though. They're a book, but I guarantee you they'll be here sooner or later. Canadians love me. Paul Schaefer's Canadian, you see. Today's February 3rd video blog. And I have things to talk about. So there, haha, I finally planned ahead. First of all, I want to talk about the comic book American Vampire. Before I even talk about the comic book, I want to preface it by saying I hate zombies. I'm sick to death of zombies. Vampires, I'm totally over vampires. That whole genre has basically been done to death. And nobody's putting a new spin on it until American Vampire. And I don't know why I'm shaking this notepad, but I guess because I wrote American Vampire on there. They have put an entirely different spin on it, on the vampire mythos. And it is a fascinating read. It's awesome. In fact, it's so good that... let me backtrack here. Now see, when you read comic books, if you're a comic book fan, comic books generally aren't self-contained in each individual issue. Each story generally lasts anywhere from 2 to 6 issues, generally around 4 to 6, the story arc. And if you read them monthly, I mean, like they come out monthly, so you'd read them monthly. So when you read them monthly, it takes about 6 months till the story arc's complete. And from month to month, I tend to forget what has occurred in the previous month's issue because either I just have... weak brain power at this point from too many shots to the dome and excessive pharmacology, and the other reason I think is more accurate is it's just a long time to read, but to go between months. Plus, if you read a lot of comics, I don't really think that would be. I was going to say if you read a lot of comics, the storylines get jumbled, but no, I don't think it's that. I just think it's a month to month is a long time. And that's why I like Marvel they give you a recap page in the beginning, so it recaps the story. That's what a recap page does. It recaps. I think DC should do that as well, and Dark Horse. Of course, if you're a good comic book writer, you will include all the details of what's occurred prior, sort of without actually appearing to be giving a recap page, which is great, except if you're reading a trade paperback, which is when they take those 4 to 5 to 6 issues and put them in one book so you can read it all, the whole story together, and then you read, then every time you get, after about 22 pages, which is the end of an issue, you have to read a recap, but since you have just read what previously occurred, not 5 seconds prior, then it's kind of annoying to have to reread that. That all being said, American Vampire is a book that is, because it's such a complicated read, not complicated so much, but because it's such a literate read, I prefer to read it after I have the entire story arc completed. In fact, I prefer to do that with most of my books. And I used to do that constantly. I would wait, so I would have a backlog of 50, 60 books because I'd be waiting till the 4, 5, 6 issue story arc would be, ready, completed, and then I would read the story arc, which the first 4 or 5, 6 months of that is really annoying waiting until you've built it up. But after that, you're always having new story arcs finished. So it's like you have fresh stuff and you have the whole story arc. So it's great. American Vampire, I wanted to do that way. But it's so good that I can't wait till 4 or 5, 6 months till the story arc's done. So I have to read it monthly. And then, of course, I forget what happened in the previous month. That's very annoying. And all that to explain that. And actually, now most of my books I don't read till the whole story arc because what had happened was Marvel and DC, which I mostly read, they had so much stuff that was current, like where you had to read it because it was you would have found out through regular media, and also was so germane to what's going on in every other book that you kind of had to stay with the main titles monthly. Keeping up with them, and now I've got where I have no backlog at all, and now I'm too lame to wait for that 3, 4, 5, 6 months till I start building a backlog like I just previously explained. So that kind of sucks because it's much better to read them all at once because the story is so much better. I remember reading a book called Earth X, and if any comic book fan, if you're not a comic book fan, this blog is going to sound kind of lame, but I'm going to get off comics in a minute. and maybe I'll get on your mom. Ah! Woo! Anyway, well, it's not like she wasn't asking for it, or for me personally. Be that as it may. What was I saying? I totally forgot. I have no fucking idea what I just said. And something about getting on your mom. Yeah, that obviously was that. But something prior to that. I was making a point, and my wife is nowhere in the vicinity to tell me, wife, what point was I making? Damn her. Damn her to hell. Anyway, so that's enough about the comic books, I guess. And when I watch this back later, I'll go, oh, man, that's what I was talking about. And tough luck. All right. So I also have some questions here that I haven't even looked over yet. But a friend of mine, he buys personalized merchandise. Like, for anybody out there who wants some Raven merchandise, like worn T-shirts I wore in a ring, or worn jean shorts I wore in a ring, or worn boots, or the choker necklaces, stuff like that. I don't have a lot of ring-worn stuff, but I do have a lot of, I do have a lot of ring-worn T-shirts, but a lot of other stuff. I also have some of the white suits I wore on TV. If anybody's looking to buy that for their personal collection, drop a line to office@theraveneffect.com, and we can sell you some of that merch, personally autographed and whatnot, for reasonable prices, depending on what you think is reasonable. To the rich people, it may be considered very low. To the poor people, it may be considered very high, but to the general populace, it's probably considered reasonable. So anyway, so this guy here, Smitty, he's bought a bunch of stuff for me that way, and he gave me a bunch of questions, and I think that's the least I can do is see what he said. Which wrestler did you have your best match against, or do you think you have not had it yet? That's very good. Who was the worst wrestler you had a match with, and why? Do I not think I've had my best match yet? See, nobody asked me that. First person that's asked me that. And no, I don't think I've had my best match yet. I don't ever think I just don't think I've had what I'm capable of. I don't think, because a lot of it is confluence. Just to have a match for a match's sake. Like if me and Rhino would have had that match at Judgment Day, that hardcore match, which I still think is probably the best hardcore match ever made, would have had that, and we were in a focused angle, and we were like a semi-main or a main event on a major pay-per-view, then I could agree with that match would probably fulfill what my best match ever that I've had. But because I've never had the confluence of being in that position on the card with that great a match, so I've never. Maybe it's just because I haven't been able to be on the top of the card for of the big two, as opposed to the big four. The big three and number 3 and 4, I've been on top of. But the big two, I guess that's probably why I feel like I never had my greatest match yet, and probably won't get an opportunity to. So, so from what I've had, these have been asked a lot, and I would say my favorite matches of all time, one would be the double dog collar with the Pit Bulls. One would be the Goldberg. One would be the Goldberg match on when I dropped the U.S. title after holding it for a lengthy 23 hours. Because that was the first good match he's ever had, and probably one of only 3 or 4 he's ever had. In fact, I didn't even know this. Somebody pointed this out to me. I had an awesome match with Goldberg on Thunder, too, which I didn't even know I wrestled him a second time, and I had a really great match with him a second time. So that's pretty cool, too, that I got 2 out of him. And, of course, the Terry Gordy match, because I convinced the world that Terry Gordy was still the same old Terry Gordy prior to having the stroke and the brain damage, and that was an awesome match. So those are those are my best matches against. But I think my actual best matches and career, and as opposed to career defining, my best matches are usually against somebody like Justin Credible, or because he's amazing. He really is. People just don't realize, but he's just incredible. And tends to get a little lazy sometimes, but if you know how to pull it out of him, you can have a phenomenal match with him. He's so good. Against the Sandman, obviously. Against Tommy Dreamer, obviously. Those two go without saying. One What else? Let me think. So off the top of my head, I'm sure I'm leaving people out, so I don't want them to be offended, but off the top of my head, I can't think of people right now. Next question. Let's see. I don't like that question. Do I like that one? In all your years of wrestling, what move or bump hurt you the most, and who were you facing? Actually, this is not quite the answer to that question, but it brought up an interesting story. One time, I was wrestling Tommy Dreamer, and we were at Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, not actually at the guy's house, Jim Thorpe's house. And actually, my best friend, one of my best friends I've had known since 11th grade, 10th grade, so that's like 100 years. He's actually descended from Jim Thorpe was like a distant relative, so there. Anyway, so we're at Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and me and Dreamer start brawling out into the crowd for ECW, and I'm like, bam, and I'm smashing him, and I'm chopping him off, and I put the wolfy claw on him. Anyway, so we fight onto the top of an air hockey table, and he gives me a pile, but on top of the air hockey table, they had a piece of wood, to protect the air hockey from all the drunken idiots that were there. So we go up onto the table, he pulls me up and he pile drives me with his fat ass onto the air hockey table. And somehow, like, the reason pile drivers shouldn't hurt is if your head is comfortably ensconced between the legs of your opponent, so it never actually hits the ground. But in this case, somehow, and I don't know how, because his legs are huge and he has a big fat ass, somehow my head slipped all the way through his legs, and a little bit of my head was sticking out, kind of like the red rocket on a dog. And it was sticking out, and bam, we hit the wood, and man, it killed my neck. Oh, I was in pain. But what scared me and what made it worse was I heard a crack. Now, I was like, man, it's got to be the wood. It can't be my neck. It doesn't hurt that bad. I'm like, but fuck, I heard a crack. And then it's hysterical if you think about it. So then I roll off the table and Tommy hits the pose and I'm feeling the top. He's standing on top of the table posing and I'm reaching on top of the table trying to touch around to see if I can feel any cracks in the wood like this, going, I don't feel any cracks. Crap, I hope it's not my neck. And so I felt around and felt around and felt around and there was no cracks on the table anywhere. So now I'm shitting myself because I'm going, I think my neck might be broken, because it's kind of like when Pitbull 2 broke his neck. Or Pitbull 1, I'm sorry, he was Pitbull 1. When he broke his neck, he just thought it was stiff. I mean, he broke it on both sides. Remember he wore the halo for like a year? He broke it. It was just a stiff neck. I mean, he's like, all weekend he's going, man, my neck is stiff. I'll tell that story in a sec. But he wasn't in agony or anything. So I'm like, man, oh my God, my neck is screwed. So as soon as the match is over, like an idiot, I finished the match and let him beat me up some more, and we go to the finish. Instead of hurrying to get to the back. But then I'm like, man, I need to get this checked out just in case. So my roommate at the time was a doctor, a foot doctor, but a doctor nonetheless. And he drives me to the hospital, and we get x-rays taken. Thank God nothing was broken. So it turned out it was just the air hockey table. But man, that scared the crap out of me.